Welcome back, one and all, and thank you so much for joining me today as we cover one of the most forgettable animated movies I have ever seen, Ozzy. Now, before we just jump right on in here, allow me to change into something a little more fitting for this video. There we go. That's so much better. So, Ozzy is a 2016 Spanish animated movie which also received an English dub, which was released in the UK and Canada a week later. It opens on the Martin household as Ozzy sprints away for some unknown reason. He is possibly hit by a car before we already get our first flashback to 1 month prior with him waking up in bed with a little girl named Paula. We see the mom character, who I believe is named Susan. The movie doesn't really name drop the parents at all throughout the entire runtime, so I had to use IMDb and subtitles to try to piece it together, and I'm still not 100% positive this is actually her name. Anyway, she's drawing Ozzy as he comes downstairs and somehow gets him to freeze perfectly in place like a statue before Ozzy can run outside to take care of his morning business. It's here we're introduced to all the other neighborhood dogs who are also just pissing away here. Suddenly, the newspaper boy comes by BMXing down the street with his massive freak of a dog. And this kid should honestly be a pitcher in the MLB because he starts whipping newspapers at the other dogs with lethal accuracy.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine. You just can't get into it.
Ozzy tries to make a run for it inside as he's hit right in the ass by this newspaper sniper. Ozzy makes his way into the kitchen to find the family sitting down having breakfast cooked by the mom, who may be the least talented chef in the world. I mean, this woman burns toast to a crisp and still finds it fitting to give to her daughter. After the meal, if you want to call it that, Paula goes outside to play with Ozzy, where she throws a frisbee and somehow hits the neighbor's satellite dish, causing it to destroy his roof and crush his brand new lawnmower. Now, I'm no expert in satellite installation, but I feel like a frisbee shouldn't be able to knock it off the roof. I'm also going to take this moment to say we are just 6 minutes into this movie. Oh my gosh, so much has happened and it has been 6 minutes. The father pays for the damages to the neighbor's property as Paula is given probably the scariest face I have ever seen from an animated character in my life by her mom. We jump forward 2 days out of nowhere where we find out that Paula has been grounded for the accident she caused. She sneaks outside with her skateboard before racing downhill with Ozzy and crashing ever so gracefully into a bush. She gets back to her dad named Ted. Again, I think this is his name. I'm not 100% sure because the movie doesn't tell us. Who takes her bee sting injuries as inspiration for a comic book he's making. Top grade parenting there. Apparently, the comic does really well, though, because they are invited to Japan for an all-expenses-paid comic festival. But oh no, the dog can't go with them! So Ted tries to call legit everyone he knows to dog sit to no avail whatsoever. Suddenly, they see a little Gideon lookalike named Nathaniel on a commercial advertising a high-end kennel. With that, we have now caught up to the present day where we started the movie, now knowing that Ozzy was running away to avoid going to the kennel. It turns out that he barely escaped being hit by the car, which should be a surprise to absolutely no one. I mean, can you imagine if this rated G movie began with Ozzy being killed? That would be pretty jarring, I feel like, to most people. I mean, I'm still reeling from Bridge to Terabithia, so. As they arrive at the kennel, Nathan shows them around the facility, which seems absolutely fabulous on the surface. So the family leaves, and Ozzy ends up being loaded onto a moving truck and is brought to a dog prison instead. There's also this really weird scene where a lollipop is stuck on one of the workers' asses, and the dog just starts licking it. Yeah, it's as gross as it sounds. Ozzy tries immediately running away and fails before we cut to Warden Grunt's office to find out that he is a dog. Yes, this whole prison is run by dogs, which is really weird because there's a photo of the previous wardens on the wall and they are all humans. I also just want to take a moment to point out that Warden Grunt is played by none other than Jeff Foxworthy, which is just very strange to me. We get a scene of Ozzy walking through the cell block with some of the most stock insults I have ever heard from a prison in my entire life.
Hello, rookie. Are you gonna cry? Come on, tell me, are you gonna cry?
Ozzy gets thrown into his cell where there's a poster definitely resembling the Bad Dragon logo on the wall, where we also meet his cellmate Frankie, who is alright, I guess. We find out that the real purpose of this facility is to use the dogs as traditional line workers in a factory that makes frisbees, because haha, dogs. Ozzy ends up messing up the production line, stopping it completely and getting shoved in a washing machine as punishment. It's lunchtime now, and they're served the worst thing you can possibly give a dog: cat food. After lunch, Ozzy and an old dog named Chester walk around delivering books to prisoner dogs, where I think it's insinuated that Chester's owners broke his legs? We have a very brief moment of Paula on the plane to remind us that Ozzy has a family, because they have basically been a non-factor since the beginning of this. And we meet the most annoying dog ever named Raider. I mean, look at this little shit and tell me you do not want him off the screen immediately.
What's up? What's up? Have you been on the moon?
He relays that the big bad dog named Vito, who is voiced by the hot chick himself, Rob Schneider, comes out of solitary confinement today. The dogs begin stamping in unison like a cult as Vito comes out of his containment, and we find out that Ozzy has been in prison for a week. And it's at this moment I think it's appropriate to let you all know that we're only 30 minutes into this movie so far. Frankie tries to escape but is caught, and we get this montage of all of his previous failures. Ozzy goes to the prison gym that's run by Vito, who scares him by insinuating he wants Ozzy to unalive himself as a joke.
Bruh.
Vito then brings Ozzy to a racetrack and reveals that there are competitive races held between the prison and guard dogs. Ozzy, who is a beagle, somehow wins a race against Vito's greyhound champion and tries to recruit him to become the new racer. Ozzy denies this and then talks to Warden Grunt for protection against Vito. The warden actually wants Ozzy to race for Vito too, but lose intentionally so that the guards will win the race. Ozzy denies wanting to race, and we have another montage of him being tortured by the guards and Vito's men as we learn the power of friendship in Ozzy's little group here. As Ozzy and his friends are set on the night shift to make more frisbees, a guard tells them that Ozzy's family won't be back to get him as it's been over a month he's been there. The Martin family then does go back to try to get Ozzy, but Nathaniel tells them that he died of the dog flu, and the family leaves sad. Ozzy finally agrees to race, but plans to trick both Warden Grunt and Vito by escaping the prison, which is kind of weird because that's been his plan all along, so this isn't anything new. And on top of that, don't you think with all the trouble he's caused, he'd be on a wicked short leash? Ozzy and the boys sneak into Warden Grunt's office and find the blueprints to the prison and barely escape Grunt's attention. Ozzy just casually bench presses 75 pounds, which is pretty impressive considering a beagle only weighs about 20 to 24 pounds. Before the big race, Vito and Warden Grunt end up placing a bet against each other. If Vito wins, the prisoners will get to watch Dancing with the Dog Stars. Literally, yes, that is what it is called. It is super corny and they mention it twice throughout this movie. Eat the same quality food as the guards, and no one will be sent to solitary confinement for a month. If Warden Grunt wins, there will be double work shifts, more cat food for meals, the TV will be permanently off, and he will muzzle all of the prisoners until next spring. Vito is literally just asking for better treatment for the prisoners, and Grunt wants to literally prevent them from talking for months. Chester changes his mind and says they shouldn't try escaping, and Doc, the big white dog of the group, pulls this handicapped old man out of his chair and tapes his paws and mouth shut, which just feels so incredibly wrong to me. Ozzy has doubts and considers racing instead of escaping now to help all of these prisoners who have been literal jerks to him this entire time, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but alright. Before the race can conclude, the power cuts out, and Ozzy disappears and runs away with his friends after all. Like, dude, just make up your mind as to what you're trying to do here, because you have flip-flopped 3 times in a matter of like 5 minutes. Just before they make it through the prison gates in the back of a cargo truck, it stops and they end up being caught. We find out later that Chester ratted them out to the guards to save his own skin, and everyone but Ozzy is thrown into solitary confinement. Warden Grunt then threatens Ozzy until he starts breaking all of the Warden's gravity puzzles he's made and then tricks them outside of his office. Ozzy goes over the intercom and tells everyone that the race was fixed and gives a liberation speech to the prisoners, reminding them of their individuality by returning their collars to them, which is really ironic to me. This is apparently enough to cause a full-scale riot, and then the most tame dogfight of all time happens. The next few minutes are pretty chaotic, so let me just hit up the highlights here for you. Ozzy does some hardcore parkour to escape the guards. Nathaniel is taken away by the dogs, and Vito kicks Warden Grunt's ass. Ozzy frees his friends from solitary confinement, and then defeats the main guard dog by ricocheting a frisbee off of Frocky's flying head and then back into his face. Suddenly, all the chaos stops, and Ozzy and his friends run along the walls of the prison to jump dramatically onto the cargo truck, completely ignoring the wide open gate they could have just ran through in the first place. Ozzy and all of his friends are finally able to return home, which results in the following reunions. Doc meets his Surfer Bro owner, who is still handing out missing posters for him, even though, according to Nathaniel, he has told all of these owners their dogs are now dead. Franky's blind owner somehow recognizes him from his panting and his steps, even though it's been like over 2 years. And look, I know this is a kid's animated movie, but that's just a little bit unbelievable to me. And finally, Ozzy and Chester return to the Martin house, who are just thrilled to welcome them both back home. The movie concludes with all of the neighborhood dogs running the jerk newspaper boy out of the town. Okay, where do we even begin with this movie? On a positive note, the voice acting is mostly passable with the exception of Radar, who's just so grating. The overarching story of the dogs trying to get back to their owners is fine, but honestly, Homeward Bound did it significantly better. The comparison between kennels and prisons have also been made countless times before, so it felt a bit predictable that that was going to be the location. What was not predictable, though, was just how unimportant the opening of this film really is. You could have completely cut everything prior to the Martins receiving the tickets to Japan, and it would have made zero impact to the entire story. Another one of my big irritants I have about this movie is that there are so many speaking roles, and I swear that they only mention their names once at most, if at all. It's really, really hard to bond with a character if you don't even know what to call them. Another big issue that I have is every one of the characters are generic and forgettable, with Ozzy being the worst offender of all. He's wishy-washy, cowardly with seemingly random spurts of bravery, and is horribly unaware of his surroundings, with none of the slapstick charisma needed to make those positive traits for a protagonist. Oh, and that's another thing. I have no idea who this movie was made for. Based on the general audience's rating, you would say that it was a kids' movie, but the drab color scheme and occasionally mature themes like prison politics prove otherwise. It's not made for teens or adults either, as the plot holes poke through so clearly and the story isn't layered or nuanced enough for an older audience. The last point that I will mention about this movie is regarding the animation. Look, I don't want to be too hard on it because the entire thing only had a budget of $8.5 million, so all I'll say is that this project was made in Blender and it really shows. Look, I know it sounds like I've been really harsh to Ozzy as a film, but in my opinion, there is no greater sin a movie can commit than being forgettable. Even utter trash fire flicks such as Birdemic you can watch with friends and laugh at it, but you can't even do that with this one. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give it 3 bones. Just skip past this one. It's honestly just an hour and a half of your life you'll never get back. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. It really does mean the world. I hope you all like this new format because I certainly did. And all of the pieces were made by Metacarpal Magic, who you'll know from some of the past videos if you've seen them.
I hope no Italians cry in the filming of this pasta.
So big thanks to her because she did an amazing job with these pieces. If you haven't yet, please leave a like and subscribe below to the channel so you don't miss out on any future uploads. I would hate for that to happen to you. But I hope you all just have the most wonderful day, and I promise we'll talk more soon. Deuces!